After Carthage fell, Rome's gaze turned eastward, toward the wealthy, cultured, and fractious world of the Hellenistic kingdoms. This wasn't just another war, it was the dawn of a new Roman era, a collision of worlds that would forever change the Mediterranean. How did a republic, hardened by its struggles in Italy and Africa, come to dominate the successors of Alexander the Great? Let us journey back to the 2nd century BCE and witness Rome's relentless march to empire in the east. Our story begins not with a grand invasion, but with a plea for help. On the eastern shores of the Adriatic, the kingdom of Illyria, under the formidable Queen Tuta, had turned to piracy. Their raids disrupted vital Roman trade routes, a provocation the Senate could not ignore. The First Illyrian War was swift. Rome's legions landed, shattered the Illyrian forces, and established a protectorate. This small step was a giant leap. For the first time, Rome had a permanent foothold across the Adriatic, placing it directly on the doorstep of the most powerful player in the region, Macedon. This new proximity created immediate friction. King Philip V of Macedon, an ambitious and proud ruler, saw Rome's presence as an intrusion into his sphere of influence. During Rome's life and death struggle against Hannibal in the Second Punic War, Philip made a fateful decision. He allied himself with Carthage. While his direct involvement was limited, this act of betrayal was not forgotten. Once Hannibal was defeated, Rome, now the undisputed master of the Western Mediterranean, turned its full attention to Philip. The stage was set for the First Macedonian War, a conflict that ended in a stalemate but planted the seeds of a much larger, more decisive confrontation. Roman senators, still wary from the war with Hannibal, framed their next move as a liberation. They declared war on Philip V, proclaiming they were champions of Greek freedom against Macedonian tyranny. This was a brilliant piece of propaganda. Greek city-states, long resentful of Macedonian control, flocked to Rome's side. The Aetolian and Achaean leagues, major Greek confederations, joined the Roman cause, providing crucial allies and intelligence. Philip was suddenly isolated, facing not just a foreign invader, but a widespread rebellion within his own backyard. The diplomatic game had been won by Rome before the first major battle was even fought. The decisive moment came in 197 BCE on the misty hills of Cynocephalae in Thessaly. Here, two legendary military systems collided. The Macedonian phalanx, the Roman legion. The phalanx, a dense formation of soldiers wielding massive 16-foot pikes called sarisse, had dominated battlefields for centuries. It was a seemingly impenetrable wall of steel. Facing it was the more flexible Roman legion, organized into smaller, more agile units called maniples. Initially, the Macedonian phalanx on the right wing crushed the Roman line, its sheer weight and momentum proving unstoppable. Victory for Philip seemed within reach. But the battle was uneven. The Macedonian left wing was still struggling to form up on the broken, hilly terrain. A quick-thinking Roman tribune, whose name history has sadly forgotten, saw an opportunity. Without waiting for orders, he detached 20 maniples from the Roman rear and wheeled them around to strike the exposed flank and rear of the victorious Macedonian right wing. The effect was catastrophic. The phalanx, invincible from the front, was completely vulnerable from the sides and back. The rigid formation broke, and the battle turned into a slaughter. Cynocephalae proved a tactical masterpiece, demonstrating the superior flexibility of the Roman maniple over the rigid power of the phalanx. Philip V was utterly defeated and forced to accept a humiliating peace, abandoning his ambitions outside of Macedon. With Macedon humbled, a new power vacuum emerged. Into this void stepped Antiochus III, ruler of the vast Seleucid Empire, which stretched from modern-day Turkey to Afghanistan. Styling himself the Great, Antiochus saw Rome's involvement in Greece as a challenge to his own imperial ambitions. Encouraged by the exiled Hannibal, who had found refuge in his court, Antiochus crossed into Greece in 192 BCE, claiming to be the true liberator of the Greeks from Roman influence. The Romans responded with overwhelming force. Their commander Mnaeus Acilius Glabrio cornered Antiochus' much smaller army at the legendary pass of Thermopylae. Yes, the very same pass where Leonidas and his 300 Spartans had made their famous stand centuries earlier. But this Chimi, the outcome would be different. Just like the Persians before them, the Romans found a mountain path to outflank the Seleucid position. Trapped and attacked from both front and rear, Antiochus' army was annihilated. he barely escaped with a handful of retainers. His Greek expedition, a complete disaster. But Rome wasn't finished. They were determined to crush the Seleucid threat once and for all. The war moved to Asia Minor. The Roman legions, led by Scipio Africanus and his brother Lucius, pursued Antiochus deep into his own territory. The final confrontation took place in 190 BCE at the Battle of Magnesia. Antiochus had assembled a colossal army, a diverse force of over 70,000 men, including phalanxes, cavalry, scythed chariots, and even war elephants. He outnumbered the Romans almost 2-1. On paper, it should have been a Seleucid victory, but the Roman commander, ably assisted by King Eumenes II of Pergamon, a key Roman ally, executed a brilliant strategy. Eumenes' cavalry charged the Seleucid left flank, panicking the scythed chariots, which turned back into their own lines, causing chaos and confusion. The Roman legionaries advanced steadily, their discipline holding firm against the elephants and the sheer mass of the enemy. The Roman legions exploited a gap that opened in the Seleucid line, and once again, the inflexible phalanx was flanked and collapsed. Magnesia was an even greater disaster for the Hellenistic world than Antiochus lost his entire empire in Asia Minor and was burdened with a crushing war indemnity. The Seleucid Empire would never again challenge Rome. For a few decades, an uneasy peace settled over the region. Macedon, though weakened, still simmered with resentment. Philippius and Perseus inherited his father's throne and his anti-Roman sentiment. He began to rebuild Macedon's strength, forming alliances and quietly preparing for a final showdown. The Romans, ever watchful, saw his actions as a direct threat. In 171 BCE, the Third Macedonian War began. This war culminated in the Battle of Pydna. In 168 BCE, the Roman commander Lucius Aemilius Paulus faced Perseus's magnificent Macedonian phalanx on a flat plain, perfect ground for the sarissel-wielding heavy infantry. For the first part of the battle, the Roman legions were in serious trouble. They couldn't break through the hedge of pikes, and their swords were useless against the long spears. The Roman lines began to buckle under the immense pressure. But Paulus noticed something critical. As the phalanx pushed forward, the unevenness of the ground, however slight, began to create tiny gaps and fissures in its perfect formation. He ordered his legionaries to exploit these small openings. Instead of attacking the phalanx as a solid block, they were to fight as small, fluid groups, penetrating the gaps like water flowing through cracks in a wall. Once inside the forest of pikes, the Roman short swords, the gladius, were far superior to the unwieldy Ceresis in close-quarters combat. The mighty phalanx was dismembered from the inside out. The battle turned into a rout. And within an hour, the Macedonian army ceased to exist. Perseus was captured and marched through Rome in Paulus's triumphal parade. The aftermath of Pydna was decisive. Rome had had enough of Macedonian defiance. The Senate abolished the Macedonian monarchy and divided the kingdom into 4 client republics. 20 years later, after a final failed uprising, Rome annexed Macedon outright, turning it into a Roman province. The same fate befell the Greek cities. After the Achaean League foolishly rebelled, Rome made an example of Corinth in 146 BCE, completely destroying the ancient city. Greece, the cradle of Western civilization, was now under the direct rule of Rome. In less than a century, Rome had systematically dismantled the Hellenistic world. Through a combination of overwhelming military superiority, shrewd diplomacy, and ruthless determination, the Republic had transformed the entire political landscape of the Eastern Mediterranean. The victories at Cynocephalae, Magnesia, and Pydna were not just battles. They were the death knell of one world and the birth of another. The Roman maniple had proven its supremacy over the phalanx, and the Roman eagle had cast its shadow over the lands of Alexander the Great. From the shores of Spain to the banks of the Euphrates, the Mediterranean was now, for all intents and purposes, a Roman lake. The Republic was well on its way to becoming an empire, a dominion that would shape the course of Western history for 1,000 years to come. Thanks for watching! If you found this journey into Roman history fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content. See you in the next video.